Hello, everyone. Quick heads up before we start today's episode. The Global Agile Summit is happening on May the 4th. Yes, May the 4th, and even with a big blowout Star Wars party, you have to join. It will be online, and it's, like always, free to attend. We have 4 tracks this year that I'm really excited about, and I think you will too. Stick around to the end of the episode to know what they are. If you want to check it out already now, you can check it out at bit.ly/Global Agile 26. That's the numerals 2 and 6 at the end. So one more time, that's bit.ly/Global Agile 26. All one word, all lowercase, and 2 and 6 are the numerals 2 and 6. So stick around till the end of the episode and I'll tell you what's in store. But for now, on to today's episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this very special leadership-focused episode, bonus episode, that is. And joining us for this episode is the co-creator of Org Topologies and the co-author of the 10X Org, Roland Flemm. Hey, Roland. Welcome to the show.
Yay! What an enthusiastic start, man. Whoa,
absolutely. He's showing the book to us on video. Of course,
yeah.
You on the podcast can't see it, but you will have a link to it in the show notes. So make sure you check that out. So today we're talking about why so many organizations may feel fast individually, but slow collectively. And what happens when you map the invisible structure, that's what Roland calls it, that's causing it. So Roland is the co-creator of a framework that helps leaders see their organization the way he describes it, as it actually is, not what the org chart says it should be. This is so interesting because when I talk to developers and architects, they talk about their code and their systems in exactly the same way. The way the system works is not what is written in a piece of paper or digital paper these days somewhere. But Roland, before we get into the framework, and we'll talk about that in a minute, tell us a bit more about yourself. What is your background and how did you end up spending your career thinking about how organizations are structured?
Yeah, great question to start with. I'm an old guy. I started working in 1984. Can you imagine? Oh, man. As a developer. Okay. And I did that for 10 years. And then 10 years infrastructure. And then I switched to more Scrum Mastership and Agile coaching and that kind of stuff. So it spans a lot of time. And in those times, I've been riding the waves. You know, I've seen everything that happened with project leads that were, well, you know, the whole routine, right? Before Agile even was there. And so when I switched to become a Scrum trainer, you know, first as a Scrum Master and then become a Scrum trainer, this was really a revelation for me because it was this real cool, different approach. And it really helped me to, well, first, I thought it was to help me understand the people, but it actually led me to helping to understand the organizations better. Because as a Scrum Master, although I was super, trying to be super effective in what I did and really good. That's also why, I studied to become a Scrum trainer because I was insecure about that. But I noticed actually that my impact was always limited. Something was stopping me from really getting things to move forward on a larger scale. I mean, you could have some local successes with your teams, but to get multiple teams, sort things out together, it was always darn difficult. And that's because you can start an initiative, but at some point, there's a boss who doesn't like what you're doing, and then they stop you, right? There is this ceiling, this limitation. So I felt many, many times the limitations of organizational structures stopping me from using my common sense to make people work together in a proper way. That's the way it is. And then along the way after Scrum, I got inspired by large scale Scrum and how they approached scaling working with one team to working with multiple teams.
That's Bas Vodde and Craig Larman's work. We have an interview with Bas also on the podcast. I'll put the link in the show notes.
Exactly. And they offered a way, to approach in a maybe more educated way how to make multiple teams work together in a proper way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the structure is actually an important context, like what's preventing us from working the right way, because you just said that potentially it's that boss somewhere that stops you. But you actually have a great story in your book about coaching student engineers in the Delft University. They were building a hydrogen racing car. These were, barely probably just out of teenage or just at the end of the teenage years. No corporate experience, so this is not your standard gray suit bureaucrat. And within weeks of starting to work together on that hydrogen car, they started to create departmental silos and who could do what and when. And how did that happen? And especially, what was the insight you got from that experience about how organizations work?
Yeah, well, how did that happen? It happened like automatically. This is maybe what happens when you don't think about org design. If you don't think about the way that you want to collaborate, then something like this happens. Now, I must say, this was in the Technical University in Delft. So these students, they have their how do you call it? They do either mechanics or specialty or electro or whatever,
electronics or software or whatever.
Yeah. So and then they are being thrown together, to produce a car, which requires all those different specialties.
A system.
Yeah, but for them it's logical to stick on their turf and to see then how with their electromechanical engineering knowledge they can contribute to a certain element of the car. And so it's logical. So it made me think. Like you were asking me, why are they doing this?
Because there was no boss telling them to do it.
No, the boss was also a co-student.
Yeah, exactly.
Who never worked in a corporate before. Well, I noticed a couple of things to be. So if you go to the deepest level, I think it's just hammered in our brains that that's the way we need to organize ourselves. It starts when you're in school. You need to choose the direction that you want to study. It's in the army. It's in the church. It's everywhere you look around you. There's this silos, right? And you need to be something. You need to be specialist in something. You're a plumber, so then we know what you are, right? It gives purpose to life. So it's deeply in us to start off with. And then a different aspect maybe is, what kind of person are you? Maybe you just want to have a boss, right? Maybe
or
you
want to be a boss.
Or want to be a boss. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. So I think those two things in the mix, and not being thoughtful about the org design, considering there might be options, not knowing about these options, which
are not trained in school, by the way.
Exactly.
Still not trained in school.
Exactly. So that's also why maybe people running companies don't look at those alternatives, because they were never taught that they are.
Right. We could have a long conversation about, the how do you call it, the Renaissance and rationalism and reductionism and so on. But before we go there, that pattern of, once things get a little bit more complex, we draw clear boundaries, we appoint leaders, we structure through reductionism. That's almost instinctive, right? As you said, it's built or drilled into us from very young age. But what's the problem with it? Because we haven't said that yet.
Yeah, good point. It's not always a problem. It depends, as the Scrum Masters like to say.
All consultants say that, right?
All consultants, yeah. It depends on the environment. Basically, let's stick to corporate life, businesses, organizations that try to create some kind of value or impact for customers. So if there's not a need for learning because the amount of knowns is very big, right? And there's not a lot of unknown stuff, and there's not a lot of variability, then you need people who can just do the job. Right? We also describe this, that if you're a director and you want to shoot a movie scene and you need acrobats, are you then going to train your whole cast to learn and balance on a ball, or are you just going to call a bunch of acrobats to do it for you?
Who already know what to do, right?
Yeah, we already know what to do, and you don't need to go through. I mean, the investment in learning at that point in time is totally not justifiable. So that's what makes the big difference.
Okay, but that's okay. The investment in learning is a great point. However, if I go back to the hydrogen car, which is a great example, because cars themselves are systems, and we need a system to build the system, i.e., we need an organization, we need multidisciplinary teams to build that car. We can either have somebody who knows everything at the top that tells all of the agents, because these days with the AI, everybody's an agent, right? It's whether it's a human agent or an AI agent. We can have all of those agents being coordinated from the top down and being told exactly what to do, right? And then we can have the process of together building a system that discovers what needs to be done and then does it. Not from top down, but together as a team that is cross-disciplinary or multidisciplinary, cross-functional is what we usually call it. So it isn't that, I mean, the movie and acrobats example is great because there the distinction is very clear. But what if the director didn't want to have an acrobatic scene in the movie, but wanted to develop the story further? Right now, he would probably ship off the script to a bunch of writers who would work in isolation somewhere to write the story. In Scrum, we do the opposite. We bring the actors and the script writers and the producers and the light and the sound agents together, and we ask, hey, how can we make this better, right? So at some point, we must have discovered that there are some classes of work where cross-functional teams work better. And you actually have a great example in the book, the healthcare.gov story, where on one side you have 55 companies, 1.7 billion, and then on launch day, nothing works. And then a 10-person cross-functional team comes in and fixes it in 6 weeks.
Amazing.
So how do we, as leaders in our organizations, how do we distinguish when silos might actually be a reasonable way to go, so specialties, versus when cross-functionality would solve the problem much faster and with higher quality?
Yeah, so of course that's very contextual, and I might not give the complete silver bullet answer here, but what I see, I've been doing a lot of work in financial institutions, in big banks. And in the beginning, as enthusiastic as I was about adaptive org design, I would want this 4,000 people bank to become one big adaptive team of teams. Why not? but there are some limitations. What we say in the book as well is it needs to be fit for purpose. So there's this part in the bank where the amount of variation, the amount of variability, the amount of challenge that they get is not so high. Let's say the regular stuff to keep the lights on, transaction processing. That's like the core. You don't want to change that every day. I'm telling you. That's where you could very well live, or maybe you're very well off with those deep COBOL specialists that you treat very well because they're hard to replace and whatever, and you have not. It's like that could be very well an option there. And then there's this other part in the bank where customers just are running away if they don't get Apple Pay on time. If you can't pay on mobile. So there's like a part of an organization that needs to be good at shipping what the customer wants, and we know what the customer wants. So there's more variability already, but it's still not chaos, right? I'm referring also to Knevin here, by the way, like simple work and complex, complicated, and then the chaos part, complicated, the other way around. But yeah, so I think then there's this R&D department where they really go wild on finding new applications in the bank for people that they didn't even know they had the need for.
So what you're saying is that there are places where the slowness of execution is not the problem.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
There you can afford to be more siloed, more structured, more top-down.
Sure. Yeah, and it's also something that's going to maybe change with AI that we have now. There's this cost of learning. What if you need like a lot of legal knowledge to be able to take certain decisions? Then you just simply might require a legal department where people only do legal stuff. But now as AI comes, you might want to get at least a part of that work. You can maybe transfer that lower in the organization to more execution oriented teams, because they can now use resources. They can use stuff like AI to make proper decisions, or at least prepare those decisions, and you will have less need of all those siloed legal people. So I think there's this movement for
what I'm thinking is, we, meaning working with many of us working with software teams and software organizations, we need to be able to assess where's the, let's call it the threshold, where going towards specialism and top-down control is acceptable or even desirable, and where cross-functionality, adaptability, speed of response to external stimuli is what is necessary, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So let's get into org topologies itself. You talk about different types of topologies. Can you put that into a context for us? Like, what types of topologies do you talk about, and why would you want to go with one or the other?
I just touched upon this already a little bit without calling them out, but the resource topology is, well, of course, the people don't have the map in front of them, so maybe it's a bit. Should I explain that map?
At least let's name the topologies and okay, just give a high level overview of what are the concepts that are important for each of them.
Sure. So the resource topology is where the hands are separated from the heads, right? We have the heads; those are the people who direct, they coordinate, and they maybe make designs, and they hand that off to the doing people, the people who can really turn this into something of value. But everybody is, like we said, resource topology is a resource, so they only deliver a small part of the whole, and for that we need to coordinate a lot. But it's good in environments where you have all these deep technical specialists. For instance, this super complex hardware, like for instance ASML in Holland. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but there's like all university level hardware people running around, and yeah, they tend to have the need for being managed for a very small part of this big machine that they have very deep knowledge of, to be managed by coordinators. So that's resource topology, and it focuses on utilizing those resources optimally, because those people are expensive, right? So you need to keep them busy. But again, this model, if there's a lot of variation in the work, can become very complex, because you can then have this coordination overhead. If the work changes all the time, you need to instruct all those people that depend on you that they need to start doing different things. So that's a complication. You get it's more complex if the work changes. Then the second topology is focused on delivery topology. Again, the hands are separated from the heads, so there's still coordination. And the coordinators give the work to, well, let's call them value streams or feature factories or units that are built to deliver, with speed. And they can get to that speed because they only see a part of the whole problem. It's not that they really get a task to do something deeply specialized, but we're talking here about agile teams or Scrum teams who can already grasp more complex problems, like maybe I don't know, the personal customer page that they're taking care of, and they do everything on that page, right? They do the design, the testing, and all that, so we can be really fast on delivering new updates on the customer page. Delivery topology, and then. But again, there's also coordination needed. Only the coordination level goes a little bit down because the complexity of what the organizational units, those teams can do, has gone up, because we have cross-functional teams or multidisciplinary teams. The third topology is interesting. That's where the hands and the heads are merged. They're no longer separated. Okay, so in this organizational design, the people who coordinate can also do the work. And they collaborate with other people who can do the work and or coordinate, right? It's just we do the work, and when I need you because we are working on the same problem, then we just go sit together and do it. So it's like the people coordinating themselves, and that's a model that not so many people know of that can work.
So what I hear you say is more like the resource topology feels more like what you would probably see in a bank. The delivery topology sounds more like what you would see in product aligned or value stream aligned software organizations. And then the adaptive topology sounds more like what I would expect to see in a small research organization or a startup. Do I get it right?
Yeah. Well, for the delivery, I think you see a lot of delivery in the bank too. I would say that maybe a service organization like a call center, that would be more resource oriented, because it's very clear what they need to do.
So
yeah.
the reason,
But wait a minute about adaptive. One more thing about adaptive. You're saying startup, and yes, exactly. It's like a startup, 4 guys and a dog in a garage, but now with hundreds of people.
Yeah, of course. And startups can be hundreds of people as well, not just 10 or 4 with a dog. But the reason why I wanted to kind of make this distinction is what you said just a moment ago. I see a lot of delivery topologies in banks. Now, you've worked in banks, I've worked in banks. And one of the things that very often happens, and it certainly happened, let's say 5-10 years ago, and it's still happening today, is this idea, we'll just organize around these value streams. And anyone familiar with SAFe will know that happened in many banks all over the world. But then the business saw unresponsiveness, more expensive delivery, slowness to deliver. So what I hear you say is that the delivery topology favors delivery, speed of delivery, because it also reduces the complexity of coordination. But on the other hand, what I see out there is actually pointing in the other direction, that when they were more close to the resource topology, although obviously never fully if you're delivering software, they were unhappy, but they were not as unhappy with what was happening.
Yeah, exactly.
So what do you see in this transition that leads to the delivery topology in organizations like banks to fail?
Wow. I think large companies have difficulty in making hard choices. If you open up a roadmap, or you look at all the projects or programs they are running simultaneously, wow. Sure. You know what happens when they moved from resource to delivery? There was more air in the coordination space because it became easier. So what happens? It filled up immediately with all those other things that they still wanted. Right? So it's not that people choose to do fewer things and then make use of that flow that they created with this in this delivery topology. No, it's just let's push more in the system because it can handle it. And that's where things go wrong, because the value streams that were created in many organizations are not designed properly. It was the existing organization that we had, and we just kind of relabeled them to become value streams. But in many cases, those value streams, the people in there, the teams in there, don't really share a lot on purpose. It's an internal process that was taken as a blueprint for creating value streams, and not the customer demand as a starting point to see which streams do we need to create to serve the customer. That's a different approach. That's one reason why in many cases those designs are poor from the start. In other cases, those designs are good. You also get this congestion, and that's because the customer changes his mind or her mind. The regulator has new demands. And the question is, does this new work that we get fit on top of those existing value streams? If I have, we always love to take the examples of a web shop because people know, or online platform, people know that. So maybe there's a team who does, acquisitions, so entering the customers, and then there's this the shopping cart thing, and there's a catalog for selecting stuff, and there's checkout, and there's the. But what if we want to improve retention? There is no retention team in this company, right? And that's where it goes wrong, because stuff falls within the cracks.
And then that falling between the cracks is so interesting, because in the book you also talk about the MADE loop: map, assess, design, elevate. And you talk about that in the concept of changing, or in the process of changing the organization structure. You talk about it without the transformation treadmill. I'm sure we will talk about that in a minute, because what you just described is also what I've recognized also in my work, which is that we, at least those of us who are familiar with successful agile organizations, we know what the end state looks like. We know where we are today, but we very often lack the language, the terminology, the process to go from one to the other. Right? And
I disagree with that. Sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
I don't think people know where they are today. Not at all. They're lost, and they haven't got a clue what their end state is. Right? Maybe they think, but what if you ask people, what is the end state? I don't know what they're going to tell you, but everybody's going to probably say something else.
Okay, so let me be very specific about this. Imagine we are in a bank, who have their own very structured and very controlled project management office. And they now want to adopt SAFe. Those are states that may not reflect reality, but they are clearly known.
Okay.
Right? Like you have PMO on one side, you have agile orientation with the SAFe framework on the other side. Many banks went through this transformation. Probably you've worked in many of them as well. At least there's the impression for the people inside the bank that they know where they are and where they want to be, right?
Yeah, that's true. True. From that point of view, you're right.
So how does this MADE loop help us in that gap?
The MADE loop will help us to reflect on how we really organize to deliver value. So it's looking at the abilities that we have to deliver value for the customer. And it's really painful, right? Because you can have a PMO and you can have your SAFe implementation. And now here we are, and we say, like, okay, and here's the customer. So where does the work start? Let's take one program, one project, one initiative. Where does it start? It starts here. There's this business person who wants it. And then what happens? He goes to the PMO, and then what happens? They do this and they do that. And then it goes to analysis, and then it goes to legal, and it goes to what? And then there's a whole tree, right? And then there's developer teams. How many teams? How many arts? Blah, 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 all that. If you can visualize that, like, okay, and what is it that we would like here as a company? Do we want to be fast in delivering on these initiatives? Do you think that this design will help you to be fast? So this is what we do with MADE. We map reality. How do we really organize ourselves? Who's involved in delivering value? And then we assess, is this fit for purpose? What are you trying to achieve? What is your strategic goal? What is the pressure from the market? Right? And what is the organizational capability that you're expecting this system to deliver? Do you have it? If not, well, then let's see options for redesign. We use the same kind of mapping, but then we can maybe say, hey, all those hands-offs here that we have inside those arts with those teams, what if we would make this a little bit smoother, right? More flow here. What would that mean? That means that we impact 5 people and 1 RTE, or 5 teams and 1 RTE. And we would move them 2 boxes to the right. What else do we need to accomplish that? So it becomes visible. But you can talk about it. First, we all agree that the system that we're looking at is really the system that we're looking at. And then we can start talking about, if we see there's a need for change, how to improve and consider alternatives on what the impact is, and maybe a gradual approach. And then the last part, MADE, map, assess, design, elevate. Let's do experiments with those 5 teams. Maybe we're not allowed to mix teams in an art because some people get really nervous when you do that. Maybe then we can propose to temporarily, for 2 teams, decide that they would work together in a certain way. Or maybe have 1 or 2 persons switch team membership for a while and see what happens. You can gradually define all kinds of experiments to then measure if that's going to give you more of the capability that you would want.
So the book is 10x Org, powered by Org Topologies, which is already available on your favorite bookshop. Check out the link in the show notes. The author, or one of the co-authors, is Roland, who's been with us today. Roland, if people want to know more about you and the work that you're doing, where should they go?
They can go to the website, orgtopologies.com. They can go to 10xorg.com. And they can go just, follow us on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is our main channel to talk about what's happening.
Absolutely. And we'll put the link to all of those in the show notes. Make sure that people have easy access to them. Roland, thank you very much for having written the book. This is very much a topic we need to talk more about in the community. So, and of course, obviously, thank you very much for being here with us and being so generous with your time and your knowledge.
Can we schedule another call? 10 million other things I want to talk about.
That's why we have the book, right? Make sure you read it, everybody.
Thank you.
Hi there, friends. Thanks for sticking around till the end of the episode. So let me tell you what's coming. On May 4th, we're running the Global Agile Summit. It will be online, and I want you there. This year, we have 4 tracks, and each one is built around real conversations with practitioners. No slides, no keynote theater, just honest interviews with people doing the work, just like you. The first track is AI in Organizations, where practitioners show what actually works. No hype, just AI that makes your Monday better. Happy Monday, everybody. And then we have the people track, honest conversations about putting humans at the center of how we work and keeping them there. And third is Agile in Construction. And yes, I really mean brick and mortar construction. Lean and Agile actual job sites. Field leaders removing waste, teams transforming how buildings get built. Stay tuned for what I think will be a super track on Agile in Construction. And the fourth track is Agile in Gaming, how game studios ship without burning out. Agile inside the creative pressure cooker. Over the years, we've had more than 12,000 participants since 2017, the time of the first summit organized with the podcast. And this year, we're making it easier than ever to join. You can register for free and get access to the summit sessions live during the event week. That's May 4th to May 6th. Or you can grab the practitioner pass and get immediate access to last year's keynotes from Jürgen Appelo, Gojko Adzic, and Mirete Kangas. Right now, even before the summit starts. So grab your practitioner pass and start learning today. Head on over to bit.ly/Global Agile 26. That's 26, the numerals 2 and 6. Sign up and I'll see you on May the 4th. And one more time, here we go, bit.ly/Global Agile 26. All lowercase, all one word, and 26, that's the numeral 2 and the numeral 6. I'll see you on the conference floor.